Yeah, this is not 2023. Okay, recording has started. Welcome to today's tutorial. We'll be continuing the question paper. So let me see. Let me open the files. It was about water, something about water, right? Water space. Yeah, so there we go. Yeah, we were finished initializing both arrays because we have two game modes, remember? We have underground and above ground, right? If I still remember very well, yeah. Then let's continue with the initialization of the array, right? Or of the game mode. So I think we've only done this part in terms of the function implementation. So now we're gonna continue here. I'm gonna add a comment to specify what am I adding. So remember the water one, it's above ground, right? And then the array world is underground array. So when they say place underground or place above ground, they mean that specific array. So that's why I'm writing that comment there. So let's see. There's randomization. So we have a random function, and then we have obstacles that need to be placed, right? And then we have valves that are placed randomly underground. For each valve underground, there must be one water, blah, blah. After each turn, those empty locations are filled with water. Oh, so that means we're actually managing one array in the initialization part. Because if you notice, they keep saying underground, 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 underground. So on the initialization part, right, you can initialize the array. But remember, both arrays they start as empty, right? Which is fine. But I'm saying when you add features, as you've noticed in the question paper, we are only adding features to the underground, not above the ground. So that makes my work a bit easier for now, right? Because that means my place feature function, right? So place feature, it's gonna take in a game world by reference, rec world, and the features that you need to place and how many features you want to place. So I'm gonna put curly braces once I'm done here. And then what else do I need to pass? It's the game feature that you want to place. So I'm gonna pass it by const reference again because I want to save space and make my application faster. And then after that, you pass in the number of features, right? So number of features, right? So you're gonna pass in the number of features. I'm gonna use const reference. Like I said, you don't have to pass it by const reference. You can pass it by value. That's still fine. So you have that. Then now we need to declare two variables. So I'm gonna have int row is equals to generate rand int between 0 and record dot rows minus 1. And then I'm gonna generate a random column. So generate rand int between 0 and record dot calls minus 1. And then this location that you have generated, right? There's a high chance it might point to a location that's already occupied, right? So we need to make sure that's not the case. So I'm gonna use a while loop because if you use an if statement, there's a high chance of you generating another different location which is already occupied. So I'm gonna say while the array, right? And remember using underground. So I'm gonna use array world, not array water. So array world, that's why I said it's a bit easier now because we are only focusing on underworld, the underground, I mean. So rec world dot array world, add that specific random row and random column. If it's not equals to an empty space, right? Then you regenerate the random location. And when I paste here, I want you to be very careful of something. I notice students making this mistake. You don't retype int. Because if you retype int, right, remember scope. That means the variables you've retyped here, right, they only exist within this while loop. So that means these two locations, these two values, they'll always be the same, even if there's a collision. So be very careful of that. So I'm gonna delete this int and not forget that, because else there's gonna be an issue. Then once you're done, you can now place the feature at that row call location, right? So obviously the array is inside of the record structure. So I'm gonna say record dot my underground array at that specific random row and random column location is equals to this feature over here, right? It's not complete yet, right? It's not complete. So since it's not complete, I just realized something, right? It's not complete. Why is it not complete? Because there's a number of features. So I need to repeat this in a loop. So that means this needs to be in a loop, all of that. So I'm gonna copy this because I'm placing more than one feature. If you leave that code that we just typed for placing the feature, that code places one feature. So I need to start with the for loop to count the number of features I want to be to place. So I'm gonna say int, it's up to you what you want to call it. I'm gonna call it f for feature is equals to 0, and then f is less than reqworld dot no, not reqworld, less than number of features f plus plus. And then within the for loop, that's where you place all of that code for placing one feature, because we're placing more than one feature. So this code needs to be inside of a loop. So this would be the full code for placing all those features. And we also have a while loop here to prevent collisions, right? Remember, this is to prevent collisions. Collisions is basically when you place the same game, when you're trying to place the same game feature in the same location, or two different game features in the same location. That's what it's gonna cause a collision, because you can only place one feature, right? So that's what they're trying to prevent by making it a while loop and checking if it's not equals to an empty space, because it has to be equal to an empty space. Remember, an empty space means that that location is not occupied. So we want it to actually generate a location that points to an empty space so that we can occupy the empty space. So I hope that makes sense. And then we have our place feature function, right? So let's see, what are we placing? So place it in the following way. You see, they've told you the game is populated in the following way. It means the order needs to be like that. So we start by placing the player begins at a random location underground. I want you to be able to follow instructions. They said underground, not above. Remember, we have two arrays, one array representing above ground, one array representing underground. So here they said underground. It means you use the underground array. So I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna try to place the player. And you notice something, they said player, not players. So you can't use the place feature function. You need to use logic here. You can't use the place feature function because it places multiple features. You still can, technically still can, but it is most of the time the player is the things I don't want you to cram. Sometimes they say the player is only in the first half of the game, or in the last row of the game, or last column. They usually switch it up like that. So that's why I don't want you to depend too much on place feature to place a player, because sometimes the player doesn't need the place feature function. Lucky enough here, they said you can place it in a random location. They didn't specify whether that's last row, last column, whatever. So there's no specific detail. So that means it's anywhere in my game world. So this time around, I'm allowed to use the place feature. So I'm gonna say place feature. What am I pass the record structure. What game feature do I want to place? It's the player. And then comma. How many do I want to place? Remember, there's one player. So I'm gonna pass a one there. So that's it. You see the beauty of functions. You write less code. If you didn't have functions, right, you'd have to actually repeat all of this for this code in the for loop and the code inside the for loop every time you place something. The exact same loop for loop. So that's why we make a separate function so that we don't, because programmers are lazy. You need to type less. Don't be typing like you enjoy typing. Programmers are lazy people. So bullet point number 2, the obstacles are randomly placed across underground. You see, underground again. You need to be very careful when you're dealing with two game modes. To be honest, there's nothing much that's gonna change. The only thing that will change is the problem. So instead of underground, maybe they say I don't know, inside, outside, something like that. So you'd know that you have an inside array and an outside array. Maybe inside the house, outside the house. So you have an inside the house array, outside the house array. So that's how little they can change the question paper. So once you understand how to work with two game modes, you should be sorted to you can tackle anything. Like literally you can tackle anything in ComSci 1A once you master this. Because if you guys can understand simulation, genius, you guys are geniuses if you can understand simulation. Simulation tends to be tricky. So the obstacles are randomly placed across the underground grid based on the number provided. So we are placing obstacles. So we need to call that same function again. Place obstacles. So place feature, rec world again, obstacle. How many of them? It's number of obstacles. That's how many I want to place. You see, beautiful. No issues, no problems, right? Then we are done with that. Just literally one line of code because like enough they said randomly, right? They didn't specify that, okay, it's in this row, first row, or in the middle, or at the center. You see, when they start being descriptive, that's when you don't use the place feature function. Because the place feature function, it places it anywhere in the game world. Literally any location is can be occupied in the game world with the place feature function. But if the question says no, for example, the player should be placed at the center, that's different. You need to type the code manually separately, right? You don't call the place feature function. And then bullet point number 3, the valves are placed randomly underground based on the number. So you see, based on the number again. But, right, it's too, I know you'd be like, yeah, well, this question paper is very easy. There's always a twist to this. Look at the fourth bullet point. For each valve underground, there must be one water item above the ground at exactly the same location and row as the valve. Yeah, they want you to type. Yeah, I know the code. It's very simple. Remember what I said about the question? If the question becomes specific, that's when you stop thinking about the place feature function because the question is very specific. It's like, oh, if you do this, do that. So now when I place my valves, right? So place valves, I need to actually copy and paste the code inside the place feature function. But do you know why I'm doing this? Because I want to keep track of the row and column so that I use those exact row and column to place something in the water array, right, above ground. So I'll show you that just now. So it's the same code, but like I said, it's a slightly different. There's a twist to it. There's a plot twist to it. So you need to change number of features because there's no parameter called number of features here or a variable. We are dealing with number of valves. So I'm gonna say number of valves. To be honest, these questions they never change. They like to repeat questions. Like I said, this is like the final destination, right? Yeah, no pun intended. This is the final destination, right, of you mastering ComSci 1A in full. Once you master two game modes, there's nothing you can't do. Even Dr. Stung, even if it brings it brings the question paper from Mars or Venus or whatever, you still pass as long as it's the same thing. It's a game. Because I'm shocked, like you guys, like I'm very proud of you guys. I mean, you managed to handle Dr. Stungu's paper. Yeah, hey, that guy, hey, his question papers don't play around. So inside the loop, right? Every time I place a feature, but now we're no longer saying feature because there's no variable called feature inside this function, right? Remember, we are now inside create world function. We are not inside place feature. I just copied the code from place feature. There's no variable called feature here. So what feature are we placing? Remember, we're placing a valve. So valve, right? And they said after placing the valve, you use the same coordinates, this, right, row and column, to place in the above ground array. So they said you must place, I don't know, you place one water item. Yeah, water item, right? In this case, what is it called? We've called it water, yeah. So I'm gonna do that. So let me do that. So place water item, right? We're placing one item at a time. So that's why I'm gonna say item, not items. In total, it will be items, but this code that I'm about to write, it places exactly one item. So recworld dot array water, not array world, because we are placing in the above ground, right? So at that same location, row column is equals to water item. Done. That's literally what they meant in the code. But do you see that if you understand the question, there's actually nothing new because you're just using critical thinking, you're using your brain. I simply copied the code inside place feature. And then I changed the variables here to number of valves. And then here I changed it to valve because I'm now placing a valve. And then here I simply added that last bullet point. So this bullet point over here, right, is this part over here. That's the part we're answering. That's how simple it is. So if you understand your logic, you can never go wrong. So we're done with placing, right? Initialization is done. You've completed it fully. Then now we go to player movement, right? So let's see. So the player cannot move outside the boundaries of the world and cannot go above the ground, right? The player cannot move past obstacles. The player, blah, blah. So all I'm hearing, the first part that's important is this part. Cannot move outside the game world. This means you need to create a function called is in world, right? So that we make sure that the coordinates that we get they're in within the game world. So bool is in world. Yeah, it's fine. I'll call it is in world. Is in world. Const int reference. Rows, right? Or passing the number of rows. It's up to you. You can pass the whole record structure, right? That's up to you. But that's not necessary. But you can do that. Const int reference rows. Const int reference that specific row you want to check, and then const int reference that specific column that you want to check. Remember, this function checks the coordinate if it's within the game mode. My bad, it's calls, not rows. It's rows and calls. So row call, this is the coordinate. So I'm gonna return okay, row greater than, it should be at least 0 because arrays are 0 indexed, right? So that means my coordinates can by minimum it should be from 0 and maximum is rows minus 1. So rows minus 1. So it's up to you how you phrase the question, how you phrase the statement. You can say and row is less than or equals to rows minus 1. Or you can say row is less than rows. It means the exact same thing, but written different. That's up to you. So I would choose this technique just for the sake of it. And then column is the same thing. It's at least greater than or equals to 0. And column is less than the number of columns. And then that's how you check if it's within the game world. And then we go to this. It's up to you, right? Remember, we talked about creating a record structure that keeps track of the player's coordinates. That's up to you. You can do that. or you can create a find player function. The thing is, I didn't see in the mark sheet where it says find player, like specifically where it says find a player. I didn't see it. So there's no need to be adding all that extra code. You can do it in a sleek way, right? You can do it in a very advanced way. Remember, you want to show them that you've mastered C++. So what I can do, right? I can create another record structure. Remember, the player's coordinate is part of my game world. So I want to add it within this record structure for game world. But before I add it, I need to create a structure, right? So that's why I'm creating it, declaring it above the game mode record structure, because C++ reads from top to bottom. If I come here and I say player location, right? If player location is a record structure that's declared at the bottom, C++ reads it from top to bottom. It's gonna get here and it'll be like, what do you mean by this? So you need to understand that very well about programming. And this applies to any programming language, whether you are doing second year or final year, the rules do apply. Computers read from top to bottom sequentially, right? So player location structure. So I'm gonna call it player location because it literally stores the player's location. Int row, int column. If it was a 3D game, right? If you understand maths, it would be you'd introduce a third variable, XYZ. Yeah, but that's advanced maths. You get one maths 1B when you see it there. And then location, I'm gonna call it location, right? And then okay, it's fine, right? My variables will be very long, right? It's fine, but I don't want to get confused when I'm typing that side because location can mean a location of anything, like a location of a house. It's still a location. So I'm just gonna type Peter's player location, but keep track. Understand something something very powerful here. The capitalization is different. This is a capital letter P, small letter p. C++ views them as two totally different things. The one with the capital letter P, remember that's a structure. So it knows, oh, you mean the record structure. And then the small letter P, it'll be like, oh, I guess this is a variable because it doesn't point to an enum, it doesn't point to a struct, so it can only be a variable. So keep that in track. So this is not wrong. You don't be confused why I'm using the same name. It's to C++ is two different things. If that's confusing you, you can call it P location. I don't know, but P location makes no sense because that P can mean anything. So before we do that, we need to keep track of the player's location after placing the player. But it seems like, yeah, we can't do it this time around. Yeah, we can't, unless if we copy that for loop. Do you see here in line 57? I don't know what row and column the player is placed in. So I can't save it and I can't go there inside this function because that means every time this function is called, even when I'm placing valves or obstacles, it'll keep on updating the player's location. So only this time around, right? Only this time, I'm actually not supposed to declare that location, unless if I don't mind working hard, but I don't want to work hard. Let me see. Let me think about it. Yeah, you can. It's up to you. Let me see. Let's just put it. You know what? Let's just put it. What I would do is I'll copy the same code, right? Let's just do it. I'll copy this exact same code here, right? It's fine. I'll do it. But remember, I need to replace this over here with that code, right? There's the code. You might ask yourself, why, what is this? You might ask yourself, why haven't I put the for loop? Remember, the for loop, it's only for one or more, right? In this case, two or more. Let's just say two or more. In this case, it's exactly one. So it's pretty redundant to use the for loop because I'm going to refer to one thing. And then, yeah, you need to understand something about scope in C++. I know you might see this int row in column here. This one only exists within the for loop. So C++ will totally ignore this one over here. That's how it works. C++ looks for the first set of curly braces. So it looks for this. This is the first, yeah, okay. let's say this is the variable, right? It's gonna try to find where it's declared. This is the first set of curly braces, so it's not declared in here. It has to be declared in the following set of curly braces outside of this ones, which is this curly braces. Then it finds it over here. Then it uses the values here. But if these two lines are not there, it was gonna go outside of this for loop again to look for the next closing curly brace, which is the curly brace for the function. Then it was gonna find the row here. I hope I'm making sense. So it won't use this variables, right? And then now I need to change quite a few things here. So instead of place feature, I'm gonna say place player, right? But then now remember I have the location of the player here. Is it remember it reads from top to bottom. So C++ is gonna go here and do that and then place the player. By the time it gets to line 68 or 69, the row and column we're still storing the player's location. So I can save it right before I place the features here. So I can say save the player's location. This is just a different approach. You can still use find player function. That's fine. But I'm just choosing a different approach. So recworld dot player location. Remember, player location is another record structure. So I need to say dot again. Dot row is equals to that row, which is this one, where I've placed the player. And then recworld dot player location dot call is equals to column where I've placed that player, right? Therefore, you see, I've saved the location of the player. You see, now there's no need for find player function because every time I move the player, I'm going to keep updating the player location so that there's no need for find player. So yeah, that's done. And then now we can go down here. So I'm going to create int d row for destination row. But remember, we already have the player's location, so there's no need for find player. So I'm going to say record, which is part of the record structure, dot player location dot row. Do you see how convenient that is? And then int d call is equals to record dot player location dot column, right? And then yeah, that's done. Then now we move the player, right? So we need the switch statement. So okay, not necessarily move the player, but let's use the switch statement to update the coordinates of to find the destination of where we want to move the player to. So based on the player move, right? So I'm gonna pass the player move variable. Then we have many different kinds of movements the player can make, right? Or directions in which the player can move in. So we have up, down, left, right. Then we have the diagonal, right? So I'm gonna have case move up, right? And then I'm gonna have break. And remember, I did warn you about using curly braces and under cases. Just always use them so that you don't forget. If in case you forget that rule, I don't know if you still remember the rule. And then move down, and then move left, move right, and then we have move up and left, and then we have move up and right, and then we have move down and left, down and right. So move down and left, and then move down and right. Let me check. Yeah, so move up, move down, move left, move right, move up and left, move up and right, move down and left, move down and right. Yeah, perfect. So yeah, let's think about it. So if you're moving up, obviously the row is subtracted. So d row minus minus. Yeah, you're moving up. Yeah, it's only the row that changes. And then moving up is still the row, but then now we are incrementing it. So d row plus plus. And then move left is column. So decol, but you're moving left, so it's minus minus. And then moving right is still decol, but opposite, D plus decol plus plus. Then up and right. We know up is D row minus minus. And then left is decol minus minus. So there we go. And then up and right. So we know up is still D row minus minus. And then down is decol. Let me see. No, right. Up and right is decol plus plus. And then down and the left. So down is increasing the rows. So D row plus plus. And then left is decreasing the column, decol minus minus. And then down and right, down is still D row plus plus. And then moving to the right is decol plus plus. Yeah, once you understand, you don't have to cram or anything. You just use your understanding. So this is the code, right? Then at the bottom here, we verify if the destination is within the game mode. Basically, we use is in world. But remember, is in world returns true or false. So I'm going to say if is in world, pass in rows from records from the record structure, pass in columns from the record structure. We pass in a row, which is the destination row, so D row, and the column decol. Yeah, and remember this returns true or false, right? So you can simply just pass in the function. Or if you're feeling too fancy, you can say equals true. If you're feeling like, yeah, there's no need for that. We did explain why there's no need. So yeah, now we can move the player, right? So before we move, let's see the movement, right? What do they say? Yeah, the question paper looks very short, but it's quite a lot to write, eh? The player cannot move outside the boundaries of the world and cannot move above the ground. Yeah, above the ground. What do they mean about cannot move, cannot go above the ground? Oh, yeah. That means the player cannot move into this, right? So it cannot move into this location, into this area, right? So you must block it from moving into there. Then what else do I need? The player cannot move past obstacles. So when it gets to an obstacle, nothing should happen. So far, this is empty. You see that this part over here, it's empty because they say they should not move anything. When the player moves into the same location as the valve, you see, now we are talking. So if I've moved into a valve, so let's check that. So check if the player has moved into a valve. But remember, we haven't moved. Technically, we haven't moved. We just found the location of where we want to move to. So now we are checking where we want to move to if it's already occupied by with the valve. I think they should have phrased that in a different way. It's not that we have moved yet. We haven't moved. The player is still in the old location. But we are checking if the destination row and destination column is occupied with the valve. That means the player has moved or is trying to move into a location where a valve is. So they should have phrased it a bit better there. So recworld dot array world, right? The destination row where you want to move to, destination column, if it's equals to a valve, that means you've moved into a valve, right? Then let's think what should happen. It is automatically replaced and disappears. So you should replace it. So how do you replace it? You change the previous location of the player to an empty space, and you change the current location, which is where a valve is to a player so that it deletes the valve. So let me write comments, right? So I'm gonna say update the player's old location to an empty space. At least I'm adding a bit more comments now so that you understand the code of the flow. So record.array_world, right? They say don't touch the above water array, right? Which is the water array. Don't touch that one. That means the player doesn't move. It doesn't have the functionality or ability to move there. So array world, right, at player's location. Yeah, this is going to be very long. Hey, I don't like that's the downside sometimes of using a record structure. You see how long this name is? What I would do, right, I'll create a variable called p row and p column, like we did last time, right? We once did this, and then cut this and put it here, and then int p call is equals to this, and then paste it here. Then here I simply say is equals to p row is equals to p call. But it's still the same thing, but now I'm using a short name. So p row p column is a better name than having to type record dot player location dot. You see, becomes very long. I used to do that when I was still doing the module, but that's a bit ineffective. It's too much work. So you see, this is better. Is equals to. Remember, this is a old player's location. Should be changed to an empty space. Then the destination, which is which is the location where the player is trying to move into, of which is basically a valve. So it's trying to move into a valve. Destination should be a player. So record.array_world at d row because it's destination row, d call because it's destination column is equals to a player. So now you've moved into the valve. So the valve has disappeared. They didn't talk about points or anything like that. Or maybe they're gonna talk about an update. I don't know. And then that's basically player movement. I don't see anything. Okay, yeah. It's not done yet, player movement, because if we haven't moved into a valve, we can move into an empty space, right? And the player needs to be able to move into an empty space. So I'm gonna do an else if, right? You might ask yourself, why am I using an else if instead of just typing it here? The problem is if you just type it here, right? That means even when I've moved into an obstacle, it will replace the obstacle. But is that what we want? Because that's the question didn't say, it says you cannot move past obstacles. So you can't replace obstacles. So and you can't also say else, because else it means everything other than a valve, which is obstacle, which is, you see, so it becomes a problem. So you need to be specific. So I'm gonna say else if I've moved into an empty location. So d row d call is equals to empty location, right? Come on, empty location. Then I replace the previous location with empty, and then the destination with player, because I need to update the player's location since the player has moved. Then what I would do, right? Don't forget to update the player's location. Remember, the player's location has been updated to be location d row location d row d call. So I need to update it. So right before, you see, I'm still within the if statement for is in world. So here I'm gonna not forget to update the player's location, or else it's gonna keep using the same location over here. And I think it's gonna duplicate players. You're gonna see a lot of P's or whatever player symbol is there into the game, which is a problem. We don't want that. So I'm gonna say update the player's location. So the player location dot row is equals to d row because it has moved to a specific destination. So that's why I'm using destination location. Dot column is equals to d call. If you don't like this approach, you can still use find player. That's still fine. So yeah, we've moved, and then that's all the movement, right? Then we'll be left with the update logic and ending the game. So what I would do, right? I'll quickly do the convert to int. So I'm gonna create a string stream. So string stream ss, and then we initialize it to that string. Then you create a variable that will store the integer. Then we must not forget to return that integer at the end of the day. Then now we try to convert that string to an integer. So we basically use C, we mimic cin. So ss value, and then that might fail. So if the string has entered the fail state, what do we do? In this case, we simply exit. We don't, you could, do you know that it's allowed? You can keep forcing the user to enter a number by changing this to a while loop. Then use functions like cin.ignore and things like that. But not here. Here is not the place to do that. If we're using cin, then yeah, you could do that. But in this case, we're using string stream, not istream. So this will be cr failed to convert. Then I specify what it failed to convert, which is the string called value. So it failed to convert value. Okay, I'm gonna type in the next line. Failed to convert value space to an integer, and then end of line, and then I exit, meaning I stop the program with error in conversion, right? And then done. That's how you convert to an integer. Since I'm using the standard namespace here, there's no need to say standard colon colon. So I can delete that, or you can still leave it, it still work. There's no problem. You see, I'm using standard namespace. Show world, right? Hey, the show world, I think it's gonna be a bit tricky if you guys don't understand. It's gonna be very tricky, but let me break it down to you guys, right? Remember, both game modes are the same size. What I would do, right? My approach is this. Let me open Paint. Let me show you how I want to display it. I want to display both arrays at the same time. Why would I do that? Imagine the black is the water array. So I'm gonna have my features here. Imagine this is the features, right? This is the first row. Then I'm gonna put a divider here, right? Like a line. Then I'm gonna continue on the other side. And on the other side, I print row 1 for the second array, right? So this will be like this. And then I move to the next line. Remember, cout endl to move the next line. Then I continue again, the same thing. And then I put another pipe here, separate. But just notice something here. There's a space here. There's a space here. Just notice the spaces. So there's a space here, and then there's a space here. So I need to be aware of those spaces. So let's try to display. So we know that they have the same size. So same rows, same columns, same number of rows and same number of columns. So int r is equals to 0. R is less than quote dot rows r plus plus. And then for int c is equals to 0, c is less than quote dot calls c plus plus. Okay, that's bad. Dot calls c plus plus. Yeah, I did talk about it. We're gonna print columns for both, right? What I would do, right? Remember, I'm gonna print columns for both. So that means I need to print the first column the first row and print every column for that first row. Because if you look at the diagram, right, you see we started column 0, column 1, column 2. So basically we reached the last column. Then after that column, we put a pipe, right, a separate. but before the pipe, there's a space. So I'm going to break it down. So we're still doing this part over here. Let me choose a different color. We're still here. That's what I'm working on right now. So that first array, I would choose as the water array on the left-hand side. I would make that a water array. To make it look fancy, right? I'm thinking like going extra, like being a bit extra. I can I can do this. You can use those functions. Remember set width, right? Just remember. See out set width, right? Things like that. Those IO manipulators. Uh all those show point, what you can use all of that to put headings, right? Like to make it look fancy. Maybe on this side I say this is water, right? And then this side I say something, a heading on top, but it'll be above these X's, right? It'll be the headings will be above. But there's no need for that. That's being extra. But I will. To be honest, there is a need because the person looking at your code needs to understand there is a need. But we'll do that later. That's the last. That's adding icing on a cake. So we need to start with the cake first, then we can add the icing on the cake. So I'm gonna say cout, right? Record dot array world at RC, right? And then space. There needs to be a spaces in between the values. Then after this, right, this first for loop for columns, right, it has printed all of this. Remember I said printing one thing at a time. It has printed here up to this. We can imagine it's up to this two. After that for loop, you need to print a space and this and another space. So let's do that. So cout. So here we're gonna print, I wanna say display the separator, right? This is what separates the two game modes, right? So that's why I'm calling it a separator. Cout space, right? Okay, I'm gonna use a string, space, the pipe, right? That pipe, space again, and then \n. Okay, not \n, my bad. It's wrong, not \n. Because look at the diagram, we still need to continue the same line. We only put at the \n once we've reached the end of the second for loop, right? So now we display the other half. So here I'm gonna say this displays the first half, right? And then this displays the second half. I hope it's a bit clear now. Then I'll copy this. It's simply the same thing, but the difference is that I choose a different array. My bad, this is not array world, it's array water. Then this will be array world, right? Then once we are done with the second for loop, only then can we say cout endl to end line. Because remember, now we are at this last row, last column, I mean, of the second game mode. Then we move the cursor to the next line. So cout. So I'm gonna say move cursor to the next line. So cout endl, right? To end line. And then that's pretty much it. It'll keep on repeating that over and over until it's printed every single location in both arrays. Right? It's gonna print this and then it goes to the next line. It prints the exact same thing, goes to the next line, and then it prints the exact same thing until we have the full game. So this will be the code. You see that if you break it down, it becomes simpler. Then here, we now need to display moves the player can make. Like what moves can they make? Move up, move, all those moves. But then before we do that, right, remember that my game world, let's say it ends here, right? Let's say you have this axis, you have a separator, you have axis, right? And then the game ends here, right? But if you notice something, it ends here and we have, we will actually move the cursor to the next line. That's fine. But the cursor will actually be in this line. We don't want it to start typing here and say move up, right? No, we want it to type in the next line. So that's why I'm going to start by saying cout ENDL. Only for that, to make it look, to put that divider there. So that the game is on its own and the moves are on their own. Then I'm going to say cout and output the moves now. So let's see. I'm going to do it the way I was doing it. So U is going to be for moving up. Yeah, just making my life easier. Move up, down. D will be for move down. And then we're going to need to move left. So L is for moving left. Just to make my life easier. And then R will be to move right. And then moving diagonally, right? Move up and left. I can use a W for that. So move. Okay, let me not use W. Let me use Q. Let me just use Q. Move up and left, right? And then move up and right. I'll just use a W for that. Move up and right. And then, yeah, there's got a lot of typing here. And then move down and left. Let's use Z for that. Move down and left, \n. And then X for move down and right. Right, no pun intended. And then, yeah, there's no point checking here, right? If there was things like points, then would have displayed points there. But then so far, I haven't had anything about that. So that's pretty much it, right? Let's see, let's do the main, right? Let's tackle the main. So this will be const int argc for argument count, and then const argv, const char, pointer argv, right? It's up to you how you write this. You can write this as pointer, char pointer, pointer. It still works. It's up to you what structure you want to use. You want to use char pointer in square brackets or char pointer pointer, that's up to you. And then we're gonna check how many command line arguments we're expecting. So let's count. You always go to initialization under the first bullet point. So we have size of the game mode, that's 2 rows and columns. Number of obstacles, that's now 3. Number of valves, that's now 4. And then the fifth one is the what? The name of the executable, the name of the app. So I'm expecting exactly 5. So if my command line arguments, right, we just stored how many there are, which is stored inside the variable argc, which stands for argument count. If that's not equals to 5, that means you didn't pass the right number of arguments. Then you're going to inform the user that invalid number of command line args passed, right? And then I'm going to actually continue typing in the next line because I don't want to be scrolling that side. So I'll just continue from there. Then I'm gonna say, I'm just gonna type here usage like that. Then you specify how it should be used. You should pass in the number of rows first, followed by the number of columns, right? And then followed by number of obstacles, space followed by number of valves, and then \n, right? So you've told them how it should be used. Then you can exit the application so that they can start again. Then now we save the CMD command line arguments, right? CMD args, just for short. So we start by rows and then call okay. The moment you start typing, right? Let me show you something. The moment you start typing a function from your header file and it doesn't autocomplete, then you know you haven't included the header file. So I'm gonna remove this and include the header file, and of which is true. You see, I haven't added the header file. And I'll say hash include water space.h, and then the namespace using namespace water space. And then we need to seed the random number generator. I keep forgetting. So srand time, you can pass 0 or null pointer, that's up to you. So seed the random generator. This makes it generate unique numbers every time. Because if it generates the same number, then why is it called random? Get what I'm saying? So you have to seed it, right? And then it's equals to convert. You see now it auto completes. Convert to int. Argument value put index 1. Then we simply just copy and paste this. Right? To save time, right? You need to be efficient. You see how fast I'm typing? You can finish very fast if you're a fast typer and you can use your brain. You don't have to always keep typing the same thing. You can just copy paste. So number of obstacles and then number of valves, right? And then we're sorted, right? We have that, that's done. Then we need to create our game mode, create our game mode. And then we're gonna get back a game mode because we are building a game mode. You can't build a game mode and get a Ferrari. It makes no sense, right? You're expecting a game mode. So that's why the return type of the variable is gonna be of type game mode. Then I'm gonna call it reg world. You can call it game, okay, not technically you can call it reg world or game mode, that's fine. I'm gonna call it reg world so that I remember that this is a record structure. I don't wanna forget that. Then call the create world function, then pass all those parameters. Do you notice the nice thing about this, right? They actually already put in order. So I don't have to think about how the function is. I just know I start with the rows. I read it from top to bottom like a computer. So I pass it in that order. So rows, calls, number of obstacles, number of valves. Do you see how much time I saved from having to go back to the header file and check? Because I used my brain. You need to save time. You don't have time when you're writing. And then we have the do while. Okay, it's fine. I'll put it here. Then while let me call it is running, right? So my creative variable code is running bool. It starts as running, right? That's fine. And then we stop it when the user wants to. Oh, I forgot to add an extra option to quit the game. Well, this is bad. You're supposed to use letters like Q or X to exit, but that's fine. I'll use E. It simply means exit, right? Must not forget to exit. There should be an option to exit the game. So we have that, and then I'm gonna declare char, right? So char option, or this is the user's choice, what the choice that they've entered. So let me use this. Right, so yeah, so far most of the things you guys should be familiar with. Then display the game, right? So I'm gonna call the show world function, which simply takes in a record structure, rec world. Then we can, this is gonna print. Remember, the last thing it's gonna display is this. Then immediately after that, remember we had this end of line character. Then we can ask the user for a question, right? So ask the user to choose, right? So cout. I'll just put this end of line character there. I'm just putting it there to, yeah, it's fine. I'll just put it there to make it to have some space. Let me show you what I mean. To have some space. So the last thing will be E, right? exit, right? That this is the last choice when the game is displayed. And then the cursor will move to the next line. It means that when if this C out that I'm writing, right, it will continue writing from the next line. But that's going to be congested, right? I want it to be in the next line again. So I need to start by saying C out end line. And then I'm going to say enter your choice, right? And then read what the user has entered. So C in, and then choice, you store it inside choice, right? And then you move the player based on the option that the user has chosen. So we need a switch statement for that. But before we do that, remember we need to convert it to lowercase. Convert to lower case. So choice, and I must store it in the same variable. And remember the header file for that is cc type. So hash include cc type, right? And then to lower function, passing in choice. But then remember to lower, it returns it as an integer. And if you remember, talked about the sizes, the size of each data type. A char, remember choice is a char. A char is like 1 byte, right? And then this returns now an integer. So an integer is 4 bytes. Do you see that they are not equal? And C++ immediately when it sees this, it complains. You can view 1 byte as like literally 1 liter and 4 bytes like 4 liters. So according to C++, you are trying to pour all the 4 liter, everything inside the 4 liter container into a 1 liter container. Is that possible? It's not possible. So therefore you need to cast. So that's why C++ forces you to cast. If it was possible, it can cast for you. That's why sometimes we don't cast, because it can cast for you. When it casts for you or converts for you, we call that implicit casting. If you are the one who's casting, that means you're doing manual labor. So that's explicit casting. So static cast to a char, convert that to a char. Then now we check the choice that the user's chosen. So choice, and I use to lower, right? See, I use to lower. So that means in my cases, I'm gonna say case, and I'm gonna choose lowercase letters, right? So to move up, it's U, then break, and then curly braces. Like I said, curly braces, just include them in each case. Even if you have one line, one sentence, one line in that case, because you might forget when to include curly braces and when not to include them. So just include them all the time to save yourself time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 1, 2, 3. Just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 5, right? My tweaking, but it's fine. I'll add more as I go on because now it's confusing me. So up, down, which is D, left is L, right is R. Yeah, it's 5. And then yeah, up, down, left, right. Then we have up and left, which should be a Q, if I'm not mistaken. Up and left, which is a Q, right? Up and right is a W. Up and right is a W. And then down and left is a Z. And then down and right is an X. And then exit is E, of which exit you simply change is running to be equals to false. So that when it gets here, this becomes false and then the loop stops. So let's move the player, right? So we're gonna call the move function. So move player, pass in the rec world, and we specify what move we want to make. So this is U, so this is move up. Copy, then move down. move left. Yeah, this is quite a lot of typing. Move right, even though I'm saving time, but it's quite a lot of typing. Move, yeah, move up, down, left. Now we're moving up and left, and then up and right. Up and right. And then we have down and left, down and left. Yeah, there's a lot. Down and right. Yeah, that was a lot. And then if it's not, right, we need to have default, right? If it's none of the above. If it's none of the above, we cannot put an error and say incorrect option chosen, something like that. So error, incorrect option chosen, right? And then once we are done with that, we can start by doing cin.clear to restore it back into a working state. Then cin.ignore to clear the buffer. I'm gonna say the first 200 up until you see the \n or new line character. And then that's pretty much it. Then once you're done, remember not to forget to deallocate memory. So destroy world, as in rec world, rec world, and then done, right? Then let's see if we're gonna have any errors. What am I missing? Oh, I put in two curly braces. Okay, my coding skills are improving. You see that there's literally like there was literally one mistake. Yeah, it takes a lot of hard work to get to where I am, though. I didn't get here. It's not that easy. You see, I really get errors. If you have experience counts. Let's see. Oh, I didn't specify the number of arguments. So go to project and then set program. So we have rows, columns. I'm gonna say 25, 25. Number of obstacles, let's say, I don't know, eight valves or five. Let me say five this and then eight valves, right? And then okay. And then build and run. Clearly something is wrong. I guess with allocation. So if you see, remember, I gave you guys this tip. If you are seeing an error like this, right? You see this, the error is 100% in the way you are initializing things, which is your create world function. So to decipher, to find out where the problem is, you go to the create world function, right? So let's go to the create world function. Um, right, so there's a create world function. You double check everything. Okay, there's our arrays we allocated properly. Here's our arrays allocated. We set everything to an empty space. So far, so good, right? Obviously, placing one feature, it shouldn't cause too much problems. So that we know should work. It is placing the player. But then the issue might start somewhere here. You see here going downwards. What I'd advise you to do, you start commenting out. Let's say you comment out this, placing that feature. Then you run it again. If it runs, then most probably the error is there. If it doesn't run, that means that's still not the error. You're gonna need to continue again. Then you can also comment out this one over here. So I'm gonna comment out everything here up until here, right? Most of the time is placing the feature. Let's see, it has to be, then what's the issue? It has to be placing the feature. That's where most of the problems okay. Unless, what mistake did I make? I don't literally see any mistake here. Yeah, we pass in the rows, const reference, everything is fine. Yeah, everything is okay. Did it? Let me see. Let me double check something here. Okay, let me just double check something. But it should converting to int should be working. Let me see how to see rows and then inline. I want to see if the converting is working. 0. Yeah. Yeah, it's sometimes you see it's very tricky to find out the error. You see it's showing 0. That's wrong. That means converting to int is failing. Something's not right. So at least we figured out that part. So let's go uncomment those lines of code. But if it's most of the time it's usually in the initialization create world function. That's where most problems okay. If it shows that weird number, right, it might be the case that you've mistakenly placed a feature on top of another feature. So that's a collision. So it blocks it from running. So start there, start with the create function, create world function if things don't work out. So let me see the convert to int, string stream. Oh, my bad. It's a silly mistake. You see that I'm saying from the string stream, store it back into the string. It's supposed to be number. I'm supposed to store it in the integer. My bad. Yeah, hey, that's an error you wouldn't figure out. Yeah, you see, there's a game, right? But we remember my bad. You guys were supposed to tell me. I totally forgot. We are printing the raw arrays. We need to replace these arrays with the integers with actual features. You guys are not correcting me. I was printing the actual array here. Remember, I need to pass this array into another array so that because you see how weird it is when a human being sees numbers instead of game of symbols. So we need to use this game feature array. I totally forgot to use that. So I'm gonna copy this and say feature, game feature, right? And then same thing here. Array water, copy this, game feature, and then within the game feature, pass that integer, which is the whole array, right? And something I need to fix here. Remember, we are already adding a space here. So it will have that space, so I can omit the space on half of this one side. So here, because I want the things to be aligned. Yeah, I don't know how you figured that out, but at least you are doing past papers. So let's build and run. There we go. Perfect. So you see that the symbols make a huge difference. You see when you're seeing integers, it was all weird. But you see that nothing is impossible. Do you see that we managed to print the game? There's the game here. It looks cool, right? And it looks almost the same as the game here. The thing is, remember the numbers are random. This is random, right? It shouldn't look exactly like this, but it should have the same symbols. You see, we have the same symbols. There's the hash, there's the cap, there's the player here. You see, and then there's the movement. And remember that space I talked about. There's that space in between the exit and the part where the user enters their option. And then I think let's try to move. So the player is here. Let's try to go down, which is here, right? I'm assuming it's gonna crash. I don't know. I think the record structure thing it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. Do you remember the record structure thing? Which part I'm talking about? The player. When you store the player's location as a record structure. I don't know. That sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Let's try that out. Let's try to move down. Okay. Okay, it did work because you see it was in the first location. Yeah, it did work. Like enough. So you see it was here, then it is here now, so it did work. But we are missing one thing. We are forgetting to clear the screen. So what I would do, right? It's up to you where you put the the clear. Where is it? Yeah, it's up to you where you put it. I'm gonna put it here, right? I'm gonna be clever. I'm gonna put it right before we print. So system CLS, right before we display, I'm gonna clear. Let's see if that's gonna work the way I'm expecting it to work. If it doesn't work, then you put it inside the main. So where's the player? There's the player here, but we know movement works. So let me move to the right. There we go. Yeah, it's refreshing. So perfect. There's our game world, right? So yeah, I think I should end the session here because there's quite a lot to. There was a lot to ingest. There was a lot to take in. But you see that it works without find player, right? Because I can keep track of the player's location. But don't forget that important part to update the player's location every time you move. Remember, the player keeps moving, so the player's location keeps updating. So you need to be smart enough to keep track of the new location every time the player moves. So yeah, that's what we have so far. So in tomorrow's session, we'll be finishing up the question paper. So we are only left with these two parts here. It is now, right? Okay, we're not. Let me quickly put this before we end the session. Remember, there has won and there's lost. They both start as being false when we create the game. So I forgot to initialize them. So here, they both need to start as false. So Reichwald dot has lost is equals to false. Because when the game starts, the user has neither lost nor won. So you need to say initialize both of them to false. Because the user hasn't lost and they also haven't won. So it's false, false. You might ask yourself, why did I use two variables? Think about it. If I only use the win variable, if win is set to false, that means the player's lost. How can you lose when the game has started? So you see, it makes no sense. So that's why I create two separate variables. I have has lost and I have has won. So yeah, after each turn for each water item on the above the ground, if there are any empty locations within one cell radius of the water item, those empty locations are filled with water. Oh, that's why it looks like this. So here you check each water item, and then you check within the square radius. If the locations are empty, you fill all of them up with water. And this is after, if you look at the question, they said at each turn. It means every time the player moves, which is inside the move player function. So our update logic, right? This logic should actually be in the move player function. So to be honest, I think to be honest, right, the function that has most the mark or most of the marks every time is the movement function. Because you need to start by moving, then add update logic, and then add end state logic. So there's a lot. It all goes down and they always say at each turn. So yeah. So yeah, that was a lot to take in. But I'll send you guys the code after this. It just looks cool, man. I like computer science. It's nice. Look, all of that work to print this, but it's like it's rewarding. It's like that TikTok sound. It's like a reward. I forgot how exactly they say it, but they say it's like a reward. So after all that hard work, and then you see this beautiful thing, you're like, wow. It kind of looks like stars, right? Yeah, so this is how you deal with two game modes. And then if they say the player can move into the above the ground, whatever, if they'd stated that, that paper, I think for the ones writing the sick test or the supplementary for the exam, they're the ones who are probably going to get such questions, whereby the player can move from one game mode to the other game mode. Like for example, maybe for them they'll get upstairs, and then this will be downstairs. So they say the player or the person can move from downstairs to upstairs. And then when they're inside, and then when they're upstairs, they can bump into those other features. You see, there's a lot of code. They are managing two arrays simultaneously. And then you check in the other array if you haven't bumped into other features in the other array. So I pray you don't end up in a supplementary situation. It's not going to end well. As you can see, two game modes is already a lot to take in. So just pass your exam, leave ComSci 1A and focus on maths. Yeah, so that's it for today's tutorial. We'll see you in tomorrow's session. Hope you guys have a lovely evening.